Hi everybody, welcome to Absolute Sound. I sit and think all the time when I get new people in there, and I kind of feel for people, anybody that comes in the store, why to buy anything. What are we going to buy? Why are we going to buy it? You look at, there's like your basic Japanese brands, $250 through $1,000 for a receiver. There's mid-fi brands that are in there, and they're $800-900 through $3,000. Then there's hi-fi. Hi-fi is like thousands of dollars and has all this stuff on it, and that's great. And I mean, it gets down to like, what's the decision-making process of buying this? Should I consider it or not? I think a lot of people buy stuff like it's like a Rolex, so they want this really expensive thing that you can show off. Like you're buying it for your eyes. It's big brushed aluminum panel, big beautiful lights. All kinds of switches that light up, do all kinds of things, or they're heavy. It's really heavy. It's like this, where you've got a big, heavy arm on it and stuff, and none of that does anything for your ears. And for young folks like yourself here, and you're coming in and you say, all right, how the heck am I going to grid this, differentiate it, maybe understand what the heck I'm doing, so I can get something, not throw away my money, not get it in the wrong direction, not make 3 mistakes in stereos trying to buy something, because you just love music and you want to listen to it. So they make things. This is a Japanese product. Doesn't matter what it is, but I got like what would be currently a $700 or $800 piece, an Angela Gilbert young piece that we make that I'm so proud of, because this is made by one person with one set of hands, with no employees and no marketing, and there's ways Angela Gilbert can make money. This is not one of them. She can only make so many a year. It's not about trying to get busier or bigger or grand or move the needle in hi-fi prestige. We don't care. We just like it when people cry when they listen to music and call us and say this is the best thing that we ever had because it works so well and sounds so good. Regardless of price, we can't compare it to it. Nothing. It doesn't matter what we spent. And I get that, and I know you know that. And so we've got some hi-fi pieces, and I got 3 things. And to keep this simple for people that know nothing about hi-fi, I'm going to consider there's 3 transformers here. There's 2 on this one because it's dual. 1 here and 1 here. Let's count this going to our output devices, which are in all our little heat sinks. There's heat sinks here, heat sinks, and they have little screwed on output devices, and they make our power. That's an output device. It pushes our speakers. And speakers resist. I don't want to move. This moves them. Okay, simple. Let's consider this as voltage. So that's going to be like speed for energy, Aaron. This is capacitance energy. You see capacitors. You see them here. You see them in ours. You see them in this basic piece. And you go, okay, they all got capacitors, which is like a battery. It stores energy because this can't get there quick enough. While this is trying to re-pick up energy, this is going to help sustain us while we're waiting. And it's going to fill in all the holes in the music, because this thing's going to have, what'd you call it? Power shortages. It's going to have power outs along the way. The amplifier is going to say, okay, play all this music, play this big crescendo, all this bass. It's going to be a complex signal. And this is going to have all kinds of things that didn't finish and didn't hold and didn't attack well enough, because either I didn't have enough speed or I didn't have enough torque. And then we go, okay, we got more speed and more torque. So if we go from basic with heatsink, and let's just consider the basic. So this plays music. Why wouldn't I just buy this? It's $300 or $400 or $500. But if we look at the signal coming in, we got jacks coming in the back. We're hitting this board, and kind of stuff's going all over the place talking to each other. We got switches and wires and pull-ups that come up here and say, okay, I'm in this chip. If I press this button, I want to kind of go over in this section. If I press this button, I kind of want to go over in this section. Or wherever it was I want to go. If I hit the tuner, I got to go over to that section. And then I got to come back and go over to my pre-amplifying, so my gain stage for the signal. I get my little signals, make them a little louder, prepare them for the output. And then the output says, okay, give me speed and torque, and I'll push the rest of the way home. But this is a lot of pathways and highways. And inside that's really thin stuff. So there's not much speed in it, and not much current or energy can get through it very quickly. And it has to kind of travel hundreds and hundreds of miles of highways, theoretically, versus other things that are more direct, to have speed and to have efficiency. These fill-ins here, if they have to travel all this way, are they as strong at the end of this thing, Aaron, as they are at the beginning? Not even close. And when it comes to music, it matters. And a light bulb, it really doesn't matter, because it's fixed. Once it works, it works. It's just a functional connection required. But But the pulse of moving stuff with all kinds of complexities, it has an effect. We're going to need lots of speed and lots of torque. These things are going to get hot when everything resists them, and they're going to go, oh, I'm burning up and I got to cool off. Okay, let's consider hi-fi. So that's maybe worth $800. This is maybe worth $5,000 today in that area of retail. So now we got a more independent left and right speed, and we got some torque, lots more torque. But Aaron, did we see the pathways in here? See, there's little traces in here. And yeah, they're a little thicker than would be on this little board over here. But it's basically the same idea, isn't it? So my potential, if I got all this speed and torque, and I'm going through all these connectors, and all my bolts aren't soldered, but they're close. In my heat sink, for instance, even this one, this is a 2-part heat sink. So basically, we got a loss or a thermal break of the air between the two. So shouldn't that output be bolted directly to this so that it cools better? Little things like that, but that's more expensive. Shouldn't these little outputs at the back, the bolt downs for the speaker wire, shouldn't they be soldered and sealed? Shouldn't these traces be in air, not sealed underneath resin fiberglass so that they're slow? We want to make them fast. So basically, this is just a souped up version of a basic machine. So they haven't really given us much more in potential. Yeah, this is better sounding than this is. But in overall, they kind of added some stuff, but they didn't move the needle much because they're going through all these same pathways. We got to go everywhere and all over the place and back and forth. And that's okay, because that's what industry has to do to produce stuff that has boards that are pre-made. There's only a couple hundred days to build a year, and they got to make, let's say they got to make 2,000 pieces. They got to get some help. So I call it like anarchy of Angela Gilbert Young almost. It's almost saying to the industry, like, I could do anything for money, but I make enough, so I'm just going to do something really nice. I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to do as perfect as I can do it. So, all right, so there's our speed, and there's our torque. And this amount of capacitance, because capacitors are much smaller today, is basically the same capacitance as this giant $5,000 amplifier. This is about a $3,000 product. Sounds like a lot. Handmade. You see silicones all over it that are 40 durometer that basically damp any vibrations, because music vibrates. Power vibrates. You see underneath the clamp desk here on the mounting, you've got silicone even under the clamp and underneath the transformer. It's brilliant to do things like this. You're quieting down mechanical vibration, mechanical mistakes, mechanical noise, NEMI, electromagnetic interference. Everything's echoing and reflecting. It helps. In between each capacitor, there's also silicone in between the sides. And there's 14-2 Romex. This is a 14 gauge copper bar. And it goes directly with 14 gauge in a beautiful lead solder joint in a perfect ball, not dripping on a circuit board. And it goes directly to the output transistor, which is right here in the heatsink. And the heatsink, this uses what's called an op amp. So that's like a multiple transistor in one piece. And there's one on each side, a left and a right. And there's good iron on here, and it's bolted right to it. It doesn't have the double part that the mistake we had before, where we've got a total thermal break here and we can't possibly cool it. We wouldn't know how much it cools. That doesn't really get very hot, but this sure does. And the tin's in the air. You can see my pen goes right through it. And not to beat up on it, I'm just saying that's much cheaper to do. This is the right way to do it. So if this is torque and speed and music's flowing, is this one going to sound any better? Is that energy is this going to have as many power shortages with that output when it's being resisted as any of these other things? How much signal board is in here? None. It's all direct point to point. You come in from the jacks and you come in on silver leads, lead soldered directly to the post, right to a switch. That's a physical connection switch, like a knuckle. It's a perfect contact. To a volume control with a simple motor on it, so you can turn the volume up and down. Signal paths are all heavy gauge wires flowing directly to the places that they need to on left and right in the shortest possible, most direct path. This thing will be more vibrant and have more musical ability and less noise and ripple than anything else comparably at it, or even close, because it's made with each of these contacts, each of these mistakes or shortcomings, because you had to do it for a production line. Consider them as singers in the Vienna choir. And each one of these pathways, all these long travel that have to be done, those are girls with colds in the choir. And this is a choir with no colds in it. So when I say to somebody, they come in, if they're buying this and they're buying this and they're going, well, I wouldn't spend $5,000 when 800 sounds pretty good. I would agree with them. Wouldn't you? Why would you do that? It's so much more money. And I mean, I don't need a thick faceplate, and I don't need brass fronts on it, and I don't need this heavy bars, stuff that looks, this is for your eyes. It's not a Rolex. I'm not going to wear it on my watch and go out and have people look at it. And we all know that probably a Timex or a Citizen will keep just as good a time as a Rolex can. Not to beat on Rolex, don't get mad at me. But I'm saying, if it's a prestigious buy and you're sticking it in the home, audio is bought for our ears, not for our eyes. And all the things we traditionally think as prestige, where we get heavy or thick or, boy, that's ruggedly built, that doesn't convey in any way, because of its mechanical thickness, to the sound quality we want that's going to deliver its potential as we add energy to it. Its improvement as we get a more direct line. But this does. And it's the most wonderful thing for somebody to stop with 38 years experience, all kinds of testing, and say, I found the right way. I found a really good way. And I want to help people put their hands on something. And, you know, for the 15 or so years that we may be around doing this, whoever can get an Angela Gilbert piece considers themselves lucky. Walt, you're in Chicago. You were talking about an FCF the other night. We did one here. When we put them in to like a regular piece, and I maybe did it earlier today, we moved the needle about halfway. But what happens when I put it in this? We have a funky over there, and I put it directly into something that has the potential of full speed, no mistakes. I mean, I got speed, I got torque, I got output cooled, and everything's direct as heck, no slowdowns. Everything's in the air, everything's flying, and with music that matters. But did we move the needle like twice as far or just as far if we did a funky versus doing a traditional piece? That we do this build up where we'll go inside and add these capacitors inside these.
Well, given a choice, I would much rather start with the best thing that I could have for the money.
Right.
However, when you added the FCF to an existing unit, the sound quality difference, surprisingly, was night and day.
Of course.
So certainly the needle was moved more than halfway. It was more 75 to 80%.
Yeah, just to help people understand, you know. And then when you do this one,
you're there.
You get to 100%. You're maximizing. You're getting all the potential,
you're
right?
as close to nirvana as you're going to get.
Right. And this, when you do things like that, and you hear real speed and real energy, and your tones right, and your first step, that first pluck of music is so fast. Because this can never be. It's going all over the place. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you got to do in a production line. I'm not knocking anyone. I'm just saying this is a perfect way. And it doesn't exist that a human being is going to make this for you by hand and hand it to you at these prices. There's no money in it. Really. Of course, there's a living, a job. But it's nice that someone has the ethics to make something that's as perfect as can be made and say, here you go. And there's your potential. And then when you come in and buy, so you bought one of these, and you're a young guy without not a lot of money, you bought a funky. And there's no way, if you didn't hear a 100-fold difference, you would have ever spent that money. You would have bought a normal amplifier and maybe modded it a little bit, and you would have been intelligent and correct to do so. But you went this way because then you found out that it's worthy of the investment, because there's nothing in here that's ever going to break. There's nothing in here we can't fix in a second. There's nothing in here that is going to give you anything but the fastest, most beautiful music you can. And that's what we want. And when you hear a difference that's, no industry component can really sound like this. We've handed these out. I gave it to you, and you're like, it's weird because it sounds so different from everything else. And you've seen that. Well, it's like it slows down music in time because there is so much supporting what's being resisted, which is everything's being resisted.
One of my pet peeves in the audio industry has been that people think it's the speakers that make a difference. And to some degree, that's true. Mm-hmm. However, with this technology and the FCFs and the ability to add capacitance, is that you can easily demonstrate the sound quality difference that we're talking about here. And again, it's not a volume difference. No. It's a sound quality difference.
Right.
So that's what, and I would think
That's right.
what most people would be interested in.
It has, yeah, go ahead.
You don't need an EQ. You don't need to remaster your albums. You just need it to come through
And you
The
don't
right way the
need-
first time.
And you don't need tone controls necessarily either, because now you have a big lake to draw your power
Yes, that's
from,
your torque,
so
yeah.
you never run out of gas.
That's right. No, not out of gas, and power shortages happen. And you bring up an interesting point about speakers, and everybody thinks speakers make the difference. And historically,
They do.
they do make a difference. And historically, that's the only thing that really moved the needle for us.
Right.
You'd go and buy a really expensive $5,000 pair of B&Ws in the 90s, and you go, wow, that's way better than the little inexpensive pair I got before, and I'm so happy for a couple of months. And then anything that's shortcoming, which is the electronics, we'll show you. Now, a speaker is not a piano and it's not a guitar. It can't make the note G or F, and it can't resonate on its own. It doesn't do those things. It's made to be flat. So in other words, it's made to just sit still. And when a sine wave comes along, it says, move the woofer in, back in and out. And you're just going to make vibrations for me. And I want you to do it based on the electrical energy makes the sine wave. It makes the signal. It makes the thing alternate back and forth. So the only thing that can truly change a stroke of a woofer or the stroke of a tweeter is the electrical energy telling it what to do. Yes, there are speakers that are bigger and smaller. The bigger ones have more bass, they have more throat, they appear to have more weight. They can play louder, which can appear to be more fun for a time. But to truly be improved, they can give you things where they're more critically accurate and other harmonics. They can have less resonances by little bits. But if you want to realize their potential, in the past we were kind of doing the same thing, so I get why people were just buying speakers. But when you hear a good piece of electronics like this that's made nearly perfect, I can play this on a $300 pair of speakers and it'll sound like $5,000. But I can't play this or this on a $5,000 speakers and make it sound better than this at $500. But I can play the 5,000 speakers on here, and the needle moves way over again. So you hear the potential of all that engineering work that went into the mechanical reproducer, which is the loudspeaker. So good electronics with cheap speakers is far more effective in an overall purchase than modest or industry electronics we're all used to with really expensive speakers. We're just kind of getting a polished up version of the same thing, because the speaker does what it's told.
Right. And no one has ever done this before. So
No.
this is truly
No, they can't. They couldn't afford it.
technology, because
Nobody, yeah.
you can't afford, traditional companies cannot afford to do this.
That's
It's
right.
not in the budget.
Nope. And
Not in the budget.
and us talking about this, it's not going to happen again, because that doesn't make anybody any money.
Right.
It's not about making money. Why would we ever do this? Why? No one else is talking about it because they can't pay the wages to do it.
These are the only products on the market that no one is telling the designer what he can do and what he can't do.
No, it's limitless. It's almost like I say, it's like audio anarchy. It's like I'm going to do
What
what's
I wanna
right
do.
and
That's
what I
right.
want to do, the way I feel about it, and how I want to get it to people. And isn't that the most wonderful thing and refreshing? It doesn't happen anymore. It used to happen back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s when people had passion about something that they did their very best. They really didn't care if they made money. As long as they could feed themselves and exist, they're fine.
Well, and I visited your
Does
store.
everything have to be about profit? Angela Gilbert, the motive is never, ever profit.
Well, I visited your store a couple of times now, and I hear people that you sold to come back in and say,
Yeah.
I'm really glad you sold me that, because it sounds even better at home than they did in the store.
Of course.
And to me, that's great for you, because
Yeah.
those people
Well,
are going to
sure.
tell other people, and they're going to come in and want to buy this as opposed to the run-of-the-mill stuff.
Absolutely. When it gets to the point where with us we have customers that end up being like disciples more than customers.
right.
They drag in their buddy by the ear because
That's
they're
right.
so afraid he's going to go to a store of the thousands that exist that have to conform to industry product that make big profit, and it's a box moving situation where they have to move. A lot of stores here have to do $20,000 a day when they're open to exist. They're going to sell you tons of things you don't need because they have to pay bills, tons and tons of them. Overhead, low, no employee stores, how I've always run. I've been here for 45 years, doing hi-fi and loving every minute of it. We go through to show people like this because I ran into the most amazing artist, designer, dual personality person that has all of these gifts, great touch, great soldering, and wants to just give. I mean, the party's going to go on as long as Angela Gilbert wants to do it, and if we have 15 years, that'll be great. And I said to her after, I said, you know what, you'll be famous when you're dead, when you're gone, Angela. I said, it's just one of those things. You're doing something that nobody can wrap their head around. We're never going to be able to promote to everybody. We can't afford it. You can't make 1,000 of these a year of anything. And we make DACs, phono stages, integrated amps, funkies. The workload that's there now boggles my mind that one human can do this with no help. Pack it, ship it, do it perfectly, do it neatly, and get it out to people. It's mind-blowing. We want people to know about this. We want to know that there is an option from 800 through 5,000 to get stuff in the middle. Either improve your bass stuff, that's right. Buying expensive stuff where you're buying an audio shrine and you stand in front of it and brag about what you spent. I get that, but what's the point? That's not for your ears, that's for your eyes, and that's for, prestige, and that's for your ego. And if you really want just music, and I mean you love all your music, whatever you're into, if you're into rock and roll, if you're into jazz, if you're into classical, whatever floats your boat, wouldn't you want the nth detail and how it's conveyed to you? Well, if you can put your hand on it, and you can hear.
That's right. And the bottom line, at the end of the day, it's the sound quality that matters.
Yeah.
And I'm
100%.
one of the biggest skeptics
for this, isn't it? For the old ear.
These kinds of things in audio, and these things do make a difference.
That's right.
It's demonstrable.
Yeah.
On a direct A/B comparison. A/B comparison.
It's not even. It's not
even close.
Right. And that's the way it should be when you're spending way more money than the bass. Otherwise, why spend it?
Like you can't.
What are we spending money for if we can't blow the doors off it for 3 times the money?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't spend it. You wouldn't spend it. I wouldn't spend it. I started in hi-fi and I bought my first system, a name audio system, and that was really good in 1982. And when I did that, it was a lot better. But I was buying it at cost, less a little bit, because it had been demos on the floor in Windsor, and I didn't have any money. And then I opened it up and saw what was inside of it, and I said, it's simpler. There's less in it. And it started to occur to me that the most direct line, with the most amount of metal, with the most amount of speed, with the most amount of torque, the most direct was right.
And you can't make everyone happy. Like some people might not like this. Like, oh, what about
no? And that's okay.
features?
That's okay. Yeah.
But
well, features and buttons. You got to remember that's either making a buzz for the feature of the button to the signal board and then going through all these pathways, or it's a logic circuit and the signal is actually routed through this stuff. So if you get bass and treble, you got to remember that little potentiometer that's doing all kinds of distorting, plus and minus. Your 2 left and right signals are coming into there, getting adjusted, going back out to the board. Why don't we just leave it there in the first place? Because all we did was, if we look at it on a curve or scope, if we listen to it with our ears, there's all kinds of mistakes. Everybody knows when you bypass the tone controls, everything sounds better. That's just removing 2 little things. Now imagine removing all 40. Imagine going a couple of inches or direct versus going all over the place. Pathways this, it tells me to use this board, go to the board. Hundreds and hundreds of turns, 90-degree angles, and then use thin stuff and seal it in fiberglass so it goes really, really slow, because energy travels on the surface. We want it to be in air like this. We want it to be quick. So at the end of the day, when you look at this, it's the first company who made something, or first person who made something that gave you every opportunity with your dollar they could to give you music. Musical, full sound. And oh, by the way, we put ports on the back of them so you can upgrade them to limitless potentials. And the things we upgrade on the back, almost across the board, are universally switchable between all our products. So when you buy a great big capacitor pack or a box pack, the things that we have, they're good for everything we make. That must be the stupidest business plan I've ever heard of for making money. We want you to buy something, never trade it in, never lose, have a limitless potential, and then add to it. Could there be anything better?
Give people an upgrade path.
Well, give them an upgrade path without actually removing their primary piece they bought, which was the big outlay expense.
Yep.
We don't want you to lose that. Say that's $3,000 and you buy it. Use it for 5 years. Historically, you're lucky if you get $1,000 for it, and then you want to buy the $8,000 one. Well, now you got 8 plus 3 invested, 11, and you got 1 back. You're out 10. Why don't you buy one for 3, put $1,000 on the back of it, and take it past the $8,000 amplifier, which this can do, because it's not limited. On our bigger amplifiers, we have Some discretion where these things are placed maybe in a little larger chassis, but we basically have more speed and more torque. But the fundamentals of connection and quality don't change. Because Angela Gilbert's an artist and she sees the music flowing. She doesn't know how to do something that's not perfect, or as perfect as she can do it after 38 years of deep experience. I mean, every little thing. This is not DIY stuff. This is a person that achieved and has had success all over the world, notoriety from the very top bleeding edge people that admire her and him, and I've seen it. From the very best and the very best talked about. She's at the very forefront and admired, in fact, because they all said, oh, I kind of cashed out and I sold to this company, sold to that company, my circuits are around. She didn't. And they were like, oh, I kind of wish I was her. That's a true artist. That's doing it purely. I'm tainted. She's not tainted. I love people that they buy my stuff, but she actually does love people and does, you know, the biggest thing about Angela Gilbert is how much she flips out and gets excited. And she gets giddy. And she's happy because you got on Facebook and you told her how much you were either loving your audio or crying about your music, or you're really pleased, and all this provides that. And they always talk about, and it's my first time ever, my first time ever. And then 2 years down the road, it's like, I'm just as happy with it now. I didn't get sick of it. Of course you get sick of this.
That's the unique
Of course you get sick of this.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Exactly correct.
When you go through one of these things and you buy something it's like getting in, it's like an F1 race car. They made like a Porsche, it's like, or Enzo Ferrari made you an Enzo, and you got your own car and you get out there and you drive it, and you just can't wait to drive it every time. And even 10 years, it never gets old. Yeah, there's faster cars come along, different things, but something made perfect is fun to drive. Something made perfect is fun to listen to. And people need to know how really good this stuff is. Made a lot of videos, talked about a lot of stuff. Yeah, and people tee off, do engineering stuff. That stuff's already in place. Angela Gilbert is a consummate mathematician, good when it comes to topology of design, the do's and don'ts and why. That's all in here too. On top of that, it's, let me simplify this down to the fastest, most effective way to do this. That's the safest way to do this. That's the least noisy way to do this. Those are all smart and good things. It all boils down to common sense. And somebody who uses all that and then is an artist and then has the touch to make solder joints that glisten like a diamond that are made out of lead solder. Do you know how you can do that? Do you know how dense that is? Most solder joints.
Looking at this right here.
Yeah, look at, they're beautiful. So that's a dense solder. That means the electron particles or the metal is right at the joint where things are flowing. If you do a circuit board and you had a circuit board piece of paper and you poked holes in it and it's 0.07 thousandths of copper thick and it's thin. It's like, you know, it's not the size of this paper in copper. That's just the board. The trace that's inside, it's real tiny. Usually it's a millimeter. The trace line. You poked a hole through it, you put a part through the bottom of it, and then a 700-degree solder bath came along, a wave, and they pass it over these waves, and the waves touch the solder joint, and then when the solder hits, when it's wet, where's the metal go on the wet solder joint? Well, it falls to the bottom, because the gravity. It goes to the bottom, and you can try and keep it up with magnets and all that stuff. If you could do that, would be a smart way to do it. You keep it right near a vectoring line, but nobody does that. It would cost money.
Don't give anybody.
Yeah, exactly. So you do this. I give them ideas on how to fix it.
Yeah.
So as the solder point comes down there, the music's flowing through, and it's not a light. It's pulsing. It's moving. And it's dynamically complex. It's just like our heat sinks and our outputs, and they're all fighting. Our parts are all fighting. So that part gets down. The energy's coming along. The musical signal's coming along. It goes in, goes down to the pin, collects around the ball of the thick electrons that are pulling. It's traveled. The electrons of the metal at the bottom, and it goes back up and over. Just like a slow blow fuse, you know what I mean? You've got a joint and the fuse and the two end caps like my hands, and in the middle is a great big fat ball of solder. Well, that slows it down. If you've got it dripping down at the bottom, you've slowed it down and redirected it down. And you've done it, 400 times. 500 times. 4 times? I like 4 times. You getting the idea, guys?
Yeah.
And that's so finally you got a chance when you spend some more money. But otherwise, just you buy basic, and you're just as happy. And the people are, and that's what the lion's share public does. And they go into hi-fi shops, and it just becomes this, where it's prestige buy. So maybe we'll do this, and I hope that helps people see when you come in stores, a little bit. It gives you, there's no way we're going to get it all across. And please, to come in and try them is what you do. I'll hand them to you. You just sign them out.